Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. and today we got a Savox video and this is 9 photos with disturbing backstories. And we will get right into this, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Let's go.
This photo was taken sometime in December 1937 in Nanking, China. It shows a soldier placing his hand on the head of a civilian. This alone doesn't seem too disturbing until you look lower down the photo and see that the soldier has a katana in his right hand. In 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army invaded the Republic of China, kickstarting what would be known as the Second Sino-Japanese War. Initially, the Japanese army focused their attack on Shanghai, where their long and bloody battle with the Chinese forces came down to the two opposing armies literally fighting hand to hand in the streets. After taking Shanghai, the Japanese army turned their attention to Nanking in December of 1937. Their attack proved too much for the Chinese forces.
To think that there was just a photo of someone about to be beheaded by a soldier, there's like photos like this that exist, it's fucking insane, because I would have never guessed that photos like that existed.
Those who survived attempted to flee the city, but were shot dead by their own comrades for trying to retreat. The rest of the soldiers are reported to have cast off their uniforms and stolen the clothes of civilians in order to enter the safety zone. The safety zone had been set up before the invasion by foreign civilians who were living in the city at the time, and as its name suggests, was intended to be an area where the citizens of Nanking would be safe from the Japanese forces. To ensure the safety of the civilians, John Raab, a German businessman and member of the Nazi Party, was put in charge of the safety zone, as Nazi Germany of course had an alliance with Japan at this point. The Chinese soldiers posing as civilians were routed out by the Japanese soldiers and killed fairly early on. In the 6 weeks following this, the Japanese army would carry out a massacre so horrifying and depraved that it has become known as the Rape of Nanking. Over 350,000 people were killed, with
350,000 people killed by the Japanese army just to do it. Pretty much, just so they could show their power for the Japanese army could. Wow, that is insane.
1,000 reported to have also been raped by the Japanese soldiers. Beheading by katana, as seen here, was a regular occurrence during this horrific invasion. 2 Japanese soldiers, Toshiaki Mukai and Tsuyoshi Noda, even held a contest to see who could kill 100 people with their sword first, and newspapers covered it like a sporting event. After Japan's surrender at the end of World War II, 2 generals involved in the massacre, Iwani Matsui and Hisao Tani, were tried and executed for crimes against humanity for the atrocities committed by the soldiers under their command. Prince Yasuhiko Asaka, who was a high-ranking officer in the attack, was granted immunity from the prosecution due to his relation to the imperial family. However, he lost his imperial status after the American occupation abolished the collateral branches of the imperial family. He spent the rest of his life as a commoner until his death in 1981 at the age of 93. The Japanese army committed many atrocities in the days before and during World War II, with this picture showing just how cruel and heartless their soldiers could be. This photo was taken on May 6, 1978, on the day of the annual Polish Constitution Day parade in Chicago, Illinois. It features then First Lady of the United States, Rosalynn Carter, shaking hands with the director of the parade. At first, your eyes may be drawn to the man standing on the right, due to his rather comical facial expression, which honestly makes him look very drunk, but was more likely just a case of him being photographed mid-sentence, leading to the camera capturing him pulling that face. However, the person in the photograph who you should be focusing on is actually the director of the parade. Take a good long look at his face. I guarantee that most of you have seen this man before. Have you figured out who he is yet? Perhaps you'd recognize him better if he was wearing clown makeup. Yes, the man
The First Lady is shaking hands with John Wayne Gacy. No fucking way! No way! That photo must be... That photo is haunting to people. To know that this First Lady was shaking hands, smiling... Fucking serial killer. And not just any serial killer, who would become known as one of the most notorious serial killers ever. One of them serial killers they fucking boast and put on a pedestal for some weird reason I've never understood about serial killers. Why do we put serial killers on pedestals and treat them like this a big freaking deal? I've never been able to understand it. I don't know what it is about us that makes us do this. It's just bizarre. And it's always has confused me, but God, to know someone like for her, did she ever know? Did she ever find out he was a serial killer, or did she, like, she maybe die or something before she got the chance? Okay, imagine your reaction when you see that photo of you're her, and then you find out the person you took a picture with murdering people.
And shaking hands with Rosalind Carter, First Lady and wife of President Jimmy Carter, is none other than the killer clown himself, John Wayne Gacy.
Yep.
Gacy had already served 2 years of what was originally a 10-year sentence for the rape of 15-year-old Donald Voorhees. This resulted in the collapse of his marriage to his first wife, who divorced him and took their children as a result. Gacy would never see his children again, despite committing a crime.
Probably best for them. It's probably best for them that they never saw their dad again. But heck, knowing the craziness and who he targeted, they might have been one of the targets.
And that would normally land him at the bottom of the heap in the prison pecking order. He was by all accounts a model inmate. He was the head cook in the prison's mess hall, had secured an increase in pay for the other inmates working in the hall, and had even supervised projects to improve the conditions for the inmates in the prison. He was even interviewed on television for a documentary called Christmas in Anamosa.
Oh, I'm John Gacy. I'm from Waterloo, Iowa.
And you're a man of some authority here. What is your title?
Well, I'm first cook in the kitchen, and I run the morning meal and the afternoon meal in the kitchen.
John, how long have you been here?
I've been here now a year and about 2 weeks.
Why am I asking how long do you plan to take up residence here?
Well, I hope to be getting out sometime in May.
Well, good. Good. You're going to continue as a cook, use that as a profession?
Right. This is my profession before I came in.
Right.
Food service.
After his release, he returned to Chicago and bought a ranch house in Cook County, 8213 West Summerdale Avenue. Not long after moving there, Gacy married his old high school girlfriend, Carol Hoff, and became the stepfather to her 2 daughters. In 1975, Gacy joined the Jolly Joker Club and created the character whose image would become infamous in American history, Pogo the Clown. He would often perform at children's parties and hospitals, rarely earning money from these performances, as he said that acting like a clown allowed him to regress into childhood. He also started his own part-time construction business, PDM Contractors, which he would ultimately use to lure his victims by offering them employment there. By the time this picture was taken, Gacy had already raped and murdered over 20 young men.
That makes that even more weird. Oh my God. Now really imagine if you're these people who were there and you allowed this woman to take a photo with someone who had already killed 20 people by this point. Already a veteran serial killer by this point, killing up to 20 different people. That is fucking insane. This is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I have no idea how to react to this. This is insanity.
And by the time he was apprehended in December of the same year, he was confirmed to have killed 33. Needless to say, after Gacy was arrested, Rosalind Carter regretted ever meeting him, clearly shocked that she'd shook hands with the monster who mercilessly raped and murdered so many young men. Even more shocking is that Gacy is wearing an S badge on his blazer, meaning that the Secret Service had given him security clearance to speak to the First Lady. To add one final disturbing detail that Rosalind Carter has no doubt regretted ever since, she's even signed the photo. To John Gacy, best wishes, Rosalind Carter.
I bet she would get to meet him, and I bet that Secret Service forget freaking giving him clearance. Lucky enough, he was after young men, so like she was safe. But freaking hell, she's lucky the target didn't change.
This picture was taken in 1972 and shows a group of men who seem to be quite happy and cheerful as they sit in the snow. At first glance, you might think that they're a group of mountaineers who simply stopped to pose for a picture. However, upon taking a closer look, you'll realize that they've actually been trapped there for a while. The seat these men are sitting in was pulled from the wreckage of the plane they were traveling on after it crash-landed in the Andes Mountains. These men had been stranded in this spot for over 2 months when this picture was taken, and the reason they appear to be so happy is that they're finally being rescued. The picture takes on a much darker and disturbing tone when you look to the right and see a human spine lying on the ground. On October 13, 1972, the Uruguayan Old Christians Rugby Club was set to have a match against the English Rugby Club, the Old Boys Club in Santiago, Chile. The Uruguayan club's president had arranged for the team to travel to Santiago by plane over the Andes Mountains. Colonel Julio Cesar Ferrades was the designated pilot for the flight. He had flown over the Andes 29 times before, but on this occasion he was taking a back seat as he was training his co-pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hector Laguara. Due to the cloudy conditions of the mountains, the pilots were not able to confirm their location. At 3:21 p.m., Laguara radioed to the Santiago control that they were approaching the airstrip. Control
I know that he was training someone, but I feel like in a situation like this, when you're going near mountains or in such a dangerous situation where being super cloudy now, I feel like the main guy should have taken control here. The veteran guy should have taken control just to make sure they got safe, but then have the other guy watching him.
Told them to begin descending. However, the plane was still flying over the mountains, and as it began descending, it collided with the rocks below. The pilot attempted to pull up, but the tail end of the plane struck the mountain, leaving a huge hole in the rear. 3 passengers, a steward, and the navigator were sucked out of the plane through the hole. 2 more passengers fell out soon after. The plane smashed into the mountain cockpit first, killing Colonel Ferrades instantly and crushing Laguara. He asked one of the survivors to find his gun and shoot him, but they couldn't bring themselves to do it. He later died of his injuries. Word of the missing plane spread quickly, and search and rescue teams from Uruguay, Chile, and Argentina were dispatched to find the survivors, but the harsh conditions hindered their search. Some of the rescuers had even flown close to the crash site, but were unable to see the survivors due to the cloud coverage. After 8 days, the rescue was called off. The survivors had extremely little food: 8 chocolate bars, a tin of mussels, 3 small jars of jam, a tin of almonds, a few dates, candies, dried plums, and several bottles of wine. During the days following the crash, they divided this into small amounts to make their meager supply last as long as possible. Despite the strict rationing, the food quickly began running out. With no vegetation or wild animals to eat on the mountain, some of the survivors resorted to eating the cotton inside of the seats of the plane, which only made them sick. When the group realized that no one was coming to rescue them, and that they had no more food, they made an incredibly difficult and harrowing agreement with each other, that whichever one of them died would be eaten to feed those still alive. Understandably, some of the survivors had reservations, though after realizing it was the only means of staying alive, they changed their mind a few days later. They were initially...
The thought in my head of being stuck on a plane, not even stuck on a plane, stuck in the mountains, fucking stranded, nothing to do, nowhere to go, and having to resort to eating people you know, your friends. Start eating them to survive is fucking dangerous. That would terrify me.
Actually so revolted by the experience that they could only eat skin, muscle, and fat. When the supply of flesh was diminished, They also ate hearts, lungs, and even brains. Eventually, several of the survivors began making treks through the mountain in a desperate attempt to find help. After hiking for 10 days, they came across 2 men on horseback across the river. After giving them a note explaining who they were and where the rest of the survivors were, the men took the note to the Chilean army, who then proceeded to rescue the survivors, ending their 2 months of hell. As the group were all Catholic, they confessed what they had done to survive to a priest, fearing they would be damned to hell. The priest assured them that they would not go to hell for what they did, as it was a life or death situation. The survivors all look happy in this photo, clearly relieved that they were finally saved, but the extreme measures they had to resort to survive long enough to be rescued will stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Oh yeah, you ain't ever gonna forget that moment. You ain't ever gonna forget when you were forced to eat people to survive. You don't forget that. That doesn't leave your brain. That doesn't leave your head. You remember that. You would remember that every moment. Every time you slept, every time you did anything, you would remember that situation. Bet you they never went on a plane again either.
Here we have a family of 3, a mother and her 2 sons, posing for a picture taken by the father of the 2 boys. They're at a restaurant celebrating the graduation of the older boy from college. This is the Whitaker family. From left to right we have 19-year-old Kevin, 51-year-old retired teacher Patricia, and 23-year-old Bart. They're clearly a very happy family, enjoying their dinner in honor of Bart.
So I'm pretty sure if I'm right, this 23-year-old, this is the 23-year-old, he has planned to the death or the attempted murder or the actual murder of all 3 of the rest of the family members, because he didn't want him failing and being in debt and all that to come out.
Bart's graduation. Bart had even been given an expensive Rolex watch as a present. However, tragedy would strike this family just hours later. After finishing their dinner, they left the restaurant and returned home. Upon entering the house, the family of 4 was faced with a gunman who had broken into their home. He fired 4 shots. Bart and his father, 52-year-old Kent, survived the attack, but Patricia and Kevin were killed. Kent angrily told Detective Marshall Slott, who was investigating the case, to find who had killed his wife and son. The case took a strange turn when Detective Slott questioned Bart about the events leading up to the shooting. Bart had told him that the family were returning home from dinner to celebrate his graduation from Sam Houston State University. The college informed Detective Slott that Bart was not enrolled with them and that he had lied to his family and the police. Moreover, when the police investigated the crime...
Oh, that's interesting. So the university he said he was in told him that he doesn't go here. He's not here. He doesn't go. He's been lying to his family. He doesn't go here. And because he kept saying he was graduating thing, he technically lied to police. So he's gonna have something to answer for.
See, they found evidence to suggest the shooting had been a burglary gone wrong, whereby the family had surprised the burglar who fired at them in a panic. However, when Detective Slott searched the family bedrooms, he found that none of the valuables in the house had been touched, and that the murder weapon was the Whitaker's own gun. Alarm bells started ringing, with Detective Slott believing the murder had been staged and planned in advance. 5 days later, Slott received word that someone wished to give him information vital to the investigation. He met a young man in the parking lot behind the police station who said he was one of Bart's friends, and that Bart had asked him to help kill his family several years earlier, and described how Bart had planned it. The plan was identical to how the murder a few days earlier had been carried out. Over the next few months, Slott began piecing together more evidence against Bart, including having a sniffer dog match the scent of one of Bart's co-workers to that of the scent that was left behind in the family bedrooms, where all of the drawers had been opened to make it look like a burglary. It was now clear that Bart had indeed planned his family's death, but before the police could arrest him, he disappeared. He had stolen $7,000 from his father's home and fled to a small Mexican village 40 miles south of the Texas border. He lived there for 14 months and told the locals his name was Rudy Rios. He'd taken this name from one of his old co-workers who had helped him cross the border. However, the real Rudy Rios informed the police of Bart's whereabouts after word spread that there was a reward for his capture. Bart was handed to slot at the border by the Mexican authorities. Bart's trial took place in 2007, where two of his friends, Chris Bashir and Steve Champagne, the gunman and getaway driver respectively, revealed that they were offered a cut of the Whitakers' $1 million life insurance for killing his family. In total, Bart had approached 5 people over several years to kill his family. He was sentenced to death and spent nearly 11 years on death row, 45 minutes before he was scheduled to be executed on February 22, 2018. Bart had his death sentence commuted to life imprisonment without parole by Governor Greg Abbott after an appeal by his father Kent. Kent had always opposed the sentence that was given to his son and fought for many years to have it changed. Bart is now serving life imprisonment, currently in solitary confinement. His father, the man who took this picture, the last time his family would be seen together, forgave his son for what he had done. Whether or not Bart truly regrets what he did, his greed at the time resulted in the death of his mother and younger brother, something he'll have to live with for the rest of his life.
It's a selfishness to him, the fact that he was willing to end the life of his mother and brother and almost father just to get money, just get life insurance money. Listen, I'd like to own $1 million too. I love to own $1 million. Am I gonna go that far to get it? No. I ain't that desperate. Ever will be. I'd love to have $1 million, sure. There's a difference when it comes to desperation, greed of it. I don't have that.
The man in this picture may look like a stereotypical nerdy photographer, but believe it or not, this is Michael Rockefeller, a member of the extremely wealthy and influential.
Oh my god, we just heard about this. We just heard about this guy. Mr. Ballin just did something on this guy. This was the one where the guy... Yeah, this is the guy who went to an island to try to get with a tribe and get a piece of art from the tribe. But they took it more selfishly, the tribe did, so when he was there, helpless, they brought him to the, back to their island thing and sacrificed him and ate him. Yeah, I remember this one.
Rockefeller dynasty, and son of then New York governor and future vice president, Nelson Rockefeller. Being one of the heirs to the family fortune, Michael was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, but he was more interested in traveling and seeing the world. After spending time living in Japan and Venezuela, Michael decided he wanted to travel to the more isolated lands that hadn't been extensively explored. After talking with representatives from the Dutch National Museum of Ethnology, Michael decided to make a scouting trip to what was then known as Dutch New Guinea to collect the art of the Asmat people who resided there. The Asmat people were not very welcoming to Michael and his team, as many of them had never seen a white person before and naturally didn't trust them. While the Asmat allowed the team to take pictures of them, they would not allow them to take any of their cultural artifacts, which Michael had wanted to take back to his father's art museum. While observing the Asmat, he also learned that the villages in the area were at war with each other, and that Asmat warriors often took the heads of their enemies and ate their flesh. Yes, the Asmats are a real-life cannibalistic tribe. This makes this picture all the more unnerving. Seeing Michael surrounded by a tribe of cannibals, dancing around him, but looking happy as he watches them. Michael returned to New Guinea a year later, accompanied by government anthropologist Renee Wassing. The two were traveling in a 40-foot canoe with a pair of local guides when their boat suddenly took a turn. The two guides swam for help, but this would take time. Michael and Renee were drifting on the boat for just over a day before Michael told Renee he was going to swim to shore. This was the last time he was ever seen. Renee Wassing was finally rescued the next day, and a search began for Michael. As stated, he was never seen again. There have been several theories about what happened to him. Many believe he was killed by a shark or a saltwater crocodile while attempting to swim to shore. The second and most likely theory is that he drowned due to exhaustion, as it seems unlikely that he would be able to make it all the way to shore, as the boat was 12 miles out to sea. Another, more morbid theory is that Michael was captured, killed, and eaten by the Asmat tribe. Legend has it that the Asmat saw Michael and pulled him onto their boat, and then proceeded to tell him that he was going to pay for the deaths of their tribesmen at the hands of the Dutch. After killing and eating him, they allegedly turned his thigh bones into daggers and used his tibias as spear points. This is only a legend, as this story was told to a group of Dutch missionaries by an Asmat tribesman. The whole story could have been made up to scare the Dutch, whom the Asmat hated for killing their people. Of course, there's also this picture that's been floating around for a few years that shows a white man among the Asmat, who many believe to be Michael. There's no way of knowing for sure if this is him. It seems hard to believe that a wealthy American man would want to throw away that life to join a primitive tribe on the other side of the world. We'll never know what happened to him, as he was declared legally dead in 1964, and he would be 83 years old today if he's still alive. This is Regina K. Walters, a 14-year-old girl from Pasadena, Texas. She ran away from home with her boyfriend Ricky Lee Jones in early 1990. You may be thinking that perhaps as a bit of fun, Regina and Ricky went to an old farmhouse and took some creepy pictures, with Regina even donning what looks like funeral clothes to add to the horror factor. Basically the type of thing a couple of young runaway lovebirds would do for fun. But if you look at Regina's face, you'll see that the fear she's displaying is not staged. She is legitimately terrified. And now you may be thinking, what could Ricky have done that scared her so much? Well, Ricky is not the one who took this photograph. In fact, by this point, Ricky had been dead for quite some time, and his killer was the one who took this photo. Not long after Regina and Ricky had run away, the two were hitchhiking on the highway before a truck finally stopped. Believing someone had decided to give them a ride, the two walked up to the truck. However, instead of inviting them in, the driver immediately killed Ricky and ordered Regina to get into the back of his truck. Regina didn't know this, but she had entered the driver's own personal torture chamber. The driver's name was Robert Ben Rhodes, a former Marine who was discharged after being arrested for robbery in the late 1960s. Robert was a sadist who got pleasure from seeing women suffer, and was abusive to his 3 ex-wives, with one of them claiming he would become aroused when she was in pain from the autoimmune disease, lupus. Around the 1980s, he became obsessed with BDSM, but his wife refused to take part. He then realized that he would have to find other means to satisfy his urges. In January 1990, Robert kidnapped Patricia Candice Walsh after murdering her husband, whom she was hitchhiking with in Texas. He held her captive in his makeshift torture chamber in the trailer of his truck, where he repeatedly violated and tortured her before killing her and dumping her body in Utah. A month later, he kidnapped an unnamed 18-year-old girl from Houston, Texas. Somehow this girl managed to convince Robert to let her go, after she swore not to tell the police about him. He pulled the truck into the woods, opened the door, and simply said, "Run." After she got out of the truck, Robert left. As she promised, she did not tell the police, as she didn't think they would believe her due to the lack of evidence. Several days later, Robert kidnapped Regina. He inflicted the same torture on her as he did on Patricia Walsh, but he kept Regina much longer, and even called her father, taunting him by describing what he had done to her. Eventually, Robert took her to an abandoned farmhouse and forced her to wear a black dress and heels, cut her hair, and took pictures of her as she posed for him out of fear. There are at least 3 pictures available online of this harrowing event, but none are more chilling or heartbreaking than this one. This picture was taken mere moments before Robert Ben Rhodes strangled Regina K. Walters to death. The look of fear in her eyes shows that she knew Robert was going to kill her, and that he was taking pleasure in watching her cower. Robert was finally caught on April 1st.
This is an insane dude. This dude's insane. He just kidnapped 2 people and would enjoy the suffering he could inflict on them. He let one girl go because she wasn't going to tell anyone, and she actually didn't. For some reason, she actually kept her word there. Didn't tell anyone because she didn't think anyone would believe her. So he actually got away with and was able to get Regina because of that. But like, that is insane. That photo is insane. Knowing just not long, like moments later, that woman's dead.
First, 1990, when a police officer pulled him over after noticing the hazard lights on his truck were flashing. The officer heard screaming coming from the trailer of the truck and found a woman tied to a bed. Robert tried to play it off as consensual BDSM. However, the officer knew right away that Robert was lying and arrested him. The police found...
I'm about to say that's not a thing of being... That's not the case. No. No, that isn't. You don't tie someone to a bed and that while you're driving. No.
Robert's murder kit in his truck, which consisted of cords, chains, whips, leashes, and fish hooks. They also searched his home and found many photos of Regina K. Walters and Patricia Walsh. It's believed that Robert had killed over 50 women between 1975 and 1990, most of whom were sex workers and drifters. He's currently serving 2 life...
What happened to his eye? Like, why is his one eye shut here? What happened to this part of his face? That's what I want to know. Not like it matters, but I was just curious. But yeah, this guy is one evil fucking bastard.
5 sentences at the Myrna Correctional Center in Illinois. The man you're seeing here should need no introduction.
Oh, I know this one. This is the person who killed John Lennon. I forget his name. The guy who killed him, I mean. I forget the name of the guy who killed him. But, that's all this is. Nope.
This is John Lennon, best known of course for being one of the frontmen and songwriters for the legendary rock band The Beatles. Along with Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, Lennon produced some of the most critically acclaimed albums in history, including Revolver, The White Album, Abbey Road, and most notably, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which went 18 times platinum. The band split in 1970, and Lennon opted to move to New York with his wife, Yoko Ono. Lennon had moved to America to get away from his rabid fans in England, who rarely left him alone. He found his life in New York much more quiet and relaxing, as while he did occasionally have fans asking for his autograph, they generally respected his privacy and gave him his space. In this picture, he's signing a copy of what was then his most recent album, Double Fantasy. That on its own is obviously not disturbing in the slightest. However, what is disturbing is the date this photo was taken. December 8th, 1980, the day John Lennon was shot dead outside his apartment. Even more disturbing is that the man who would shoot him 6 hours after this photo was taken is standing right next to Lennon. The man's name is Mark Chapman, a former security guard who had developed serious mental health issues in the years leading up to the shooting. After becoming a born-again Christian in 1971, Chapman's life began to spiral out of control, particularly when he began reading the J.D. Salinger novel, The Catcher in the Rye, saying he identified with the main character, especially his plight, his loneliness, and his alienation from society. In his youth, Chapman had been a huge fan of the Beatles, and would even fantasize about being a member of the band and experiencing all of the fame and fortune that came with it. However, once he converted to Christianity, his love for the Beatles, and Lennon in particular, turned to hatred after Lennon made a comment that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus. Chapman believed that Lennon was a poser who espoused virtues and ideals that he didn't practice. By October, Chapman had quit his job as a security guard, signing out as John Lennon on his final day. Then, he prepared to take a fateful trip to New York City. Chapman said that Lennon was very polite, giving him his autograph while on his way to a limousine. He even described Lennon as a very decent and cordial man. But by this point, Chapman had already committed to his plan of killing Lennon. He waited outside of the Dakota Hotel until John Lennon and Yoko Ono returned at 10:50 p.m. He then drew a .38 special revolver and fired 5 shots, 4 of which hit Lennon in the back and shoulder, puncturing his lung and arteries. Chapman actually remained at the scene reading Catcher in the Rye until the police arrived. Due to the nature of Lennon's injuries, the police did not call the ambulance and rushed him to the hospital in a squad car. but he was pronounced dead on arrival. Chapman's legal team intended to make an insanity defense, as he had been determined to be in a psychotic state at the time of the murder. However, he pleaded guilty to the crime and was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. In the years since, he's expressed regret for what he did and insists he's no longer a danger to anyone. But he has been denied parole 11 times since the year 2000. Over 40 years have passed since Lennon's death, but this picture of him politely signing an autograph for the man who would murder him just a few hours later is still every bit as unnerving now as it was then. Here we have...
Oh, I know this one. Sorry, I got much to say about these. I just know who they are. Like John Lennon one, I had nothing I could add there. This one I say, because this is the dude who was through a party while I think his parents were dead in one of the rooms of the house he had that the party was in. And he told no one to go in there, and then I think he showed one of his friends who took this... he showed one of his friends, he showed this dude, because the killer's the one holding the red cup. So he showed the dude right there that's taking the photo, and the friend took a photo with him, because it was the last one they'd take, because he planned, as a normal person would, to go rat him into the police.
Have two friends posing for a picture at a house party. Strangely, however, neither of them seem particularly happy. In fact, the guy on the left is pale and looks like he's just seen something horrifying and is uncomfortable standing next to his friend on the right. The guy on the right is Tyler Hadley, the host of the party. He'd been telling his classmates at Port St. Lucie High all week that he was going to be having a house party because his parents were out of town. At first, his friends didn't believe him, as he'd never thrown a party before because his parents would never allow it, especially as they had reportedly been increasingly strict with him lately. Tyler, however, continued to insist that the party would indeed go ahead. Over time, he seemed less sure, as when one of his friends asked him if it was still going to happen, he simply replied with, "I'm working on it." At 8:15 p.m. on July 16, 2011, Tyler confirmed that the party was indeed going ahead. When one of his friends asked him about the possibility of his parents coming home, he replied, "They won't, trust me." The party began around 11:30 p.m. and was attended by at least 60 people. Some of the guests who he greeted at the door noticed that he seemed anxious. His eyes were large and white, his pupils were expanded, and he kept rubbing his hands together, nervously clenching his fists. At first, he told everyone that he didn't want any of them smoking in the house, but he eventually said that he didn't care if they smoked indoors. Tyler wanted the guests to stay in the house, as he was worried that the neighbors would call the police if they made too much noise. Someone at the party joked that Tyler had killed his parents, as whenever someone asked him where they had gone, he always gave a different answer. He told one guest that his parents were in Georgia, he told another that they were in Orlando, and at one point, he even claimed that his parents didn't live there, and that it was his house. Two of Tyler's oldest friends said that he had expressed a desire to kill his parents before. Mark Andrews, who had met Tyler 11 years earlier, said that when Tyler was 10 years old, he showed up at the Andrews house after a fight with his mother. He vowed that he would kill his parents. Mark told Tyler that all parents pissed off their kids, and Tyler, calming down, agreed. The two boys then laughed about it. Another of Tyler's friends, Marky Phillips, said that when he was hanging out with Tyler 2 weeks earlier, he randomly said he wanted to kill his parents and throw a party, because nobody had ever thrown a party with dead bodies in the house. As Mark...
If I was that friend, what then Tyler said, when thing would have went, I'm throwing a party, not long after being saying I'm gonna kill my family and then throw a party. Once he says he's throwing a party, I'm like, oh no. Oh no. I guess in theory though, you couldn't really like rat him in because the police probably wouldn't take it seriously. I was like, because if he hadn't done it at that moment. So the only way you could do it is if have police show up the day the party happens and have them check to see if his parents were dead at that point. That'd be the only way you could do it, but no one's gonna do that because it makes no sense. So yeah, makes sense why no one really called in the police, you wouldn't know what the hell to do with that.
Andrews was about to lead the increasingly chaotic party at around 1:30 a.m. Tyler stopped him and said he had something important to tell him. I did some things. I might go to prison. I might go away for life. I don't know. I'm freaking out right now, Tyler said. What are you talking about? Said Mark. I know you are not going to believe me. No one will believe me. I freaking killed somebody, said Tyler. You killing someone is your own business. Don't be telling me that sort of thing. I don't need to know, said Mark. Mark's answer to this confession implies that he thought Tyler was joking. Tyler then asked his best friend Michael Mann.
That's just a weird response. I don't know. I guess he assumed he was joking, but it's a weird way to word of like, hey, listen, man, if you killed someone, that's your own business. I don't want to know that shit. I don't want to know at all if you killed someone.
And doubt if they could speak outside. He told him the same thing he had told Mark. Michael, I'm being real. I'm not lying to you. If you look closely enough, you can see signs. He told Michael to look in the driveway. Michael noticed that Tyler's parents' cars were parked there. Tyler then led him to the garage, where there was a bloody footprint on the floor. He then led Michael to his parents' bedroom, where he showed him a pile of blood-stained towels, and under the towels, a human leg was visible. Tyler had beaten his parents to death with a hammer from the garage. Michael was horrified by what he had seen, but stayed at the party and even posed for a few selfies with Tyler, including this one. Now we know why Michael looks so nervous. He's standing next to a deranged murderer who had been his best friend since childhood. Before Michael left the party, he hid some pills that Tyler was planning on killing himself with and called the police, telling them the whole story of what Tyler had done. When they arrived and Tyler answered the door, they immediately pointed their guns at him and ordered him to lay on the ground. When they asked if any adults were home, Tyler simply said no. The police entered the house, went to the master bedroom, and found Tyler's parents. Many of Tyler's friends believed that the murder was the result of his heavy drug use, and Tyler himself said in a letter from prison to his grandparents that he wished he'd, quote, never taken that damn pill. At the same time though, he'd also told Michael Mandel that he'd been purposely waiting for his brother to move out so he could kill their parents, and had begun planning the murder 3 weeks before actually going through with it, and later bragged about how much attention he was getting because of the murder.
That is insane. This guy has no actual remorse. The guy does not care at all that he killed him. He's just an evil dude. Like, it's next level type of evil what this dude is. Like, holy shit.
Tyler was not given the death sentence due to his age at the time of the murders, but he is currently serving a life sentence, and in 2018, it was decided that he may be eligible for parole in the future. This picture was taken in 1989 and shows a woman dressed in the outfit she prepared for her graduation from the Open University. The woman is an older graduate at 47 years old, but people attending college later in life is not uncommon. There's nothing in this picture to suggest that there's a disturbing story behind it. It's just a normal lady smiling happily after all, right? Well, this is no normal lady. At the time of this photo being taken, she had been in prison for 23 years. She is one of the most infamous serial killers in British history. This woman is Myra Hindley. Hindley was born on July 23rd, 1942, in Crumpsall, Manchester. Her father had served as a paratrooper in the Second World War, an experience which hardened him for the worse, as he became an abusive alcoholic towards Myra.
I blew a 5 guys by a photo because I was just like, oh, gonna get an older woman who got, like, killed after graduation. No, she is just a killer herself. She had been in prison for 20 years by the time that photo was taken. What? I'm bafflingly confused by that. So damn much.
And ordered her to defend herself against bullies under the threat of being beaten herself. Her father's insistence on solving her problems with violence led to her knocking a boy out cold when she was only 8 years old. It's been said that Hindley was not only used to violence at home, but rewarded for it outside. She had several jobs as a teenager, but usually ended up losing them due to repeated absences. She was also briefly engaged when she was 17, but ended the relationship as she felt the young man she was going to marry was too immature to provide for her. In 1961, she got a job as a typist at the chemical distribution company Millwards. It was here that she first met a young man named Ian Brady. Despite being extremely intelligent and coming across as a nice man, Brady had already been arrested several times in his teens and spent a lot of time in reform schools. Several colleagues at Millwards also reported that he could be short-tempered despite his calm demeanor. Even with his flaws, Myra found herself infatuated with him and even wrote about him in her diary for months before she actually spoke to him for the first time. Eventually, the two began dating. Their date would usually involve going to an X-rated theater before going back to Myra's house to drink German wine. It wasn't a coincidence that the wine happened to be German either, as Brady got Myra involved in his fascination with the atrocities committed by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Believing Brady...
These two just ain't right. These two just ain't right in the head. I don't appreciate it. Oh my god. This was a toxic couple before a toxic couple was too. I saw a toxic couple because I went to a fair yesterday, the fall fair here, where I live, and then I went, and I was witness with the group I was in. I witnessed one of the most toxic couples I've ever witnessed in my life. It is insane. I'm not gonna say who they were. And I don't think they watch my shit, so I don't even worry about it. But it's insane what I saw. But not about that. These two. This is some next level shit. Because this is a guy who got a girl into Adolf Hitler and Nazi shit. So this is a different type of shit.
Brady would want a woman who was the ideal Aryan. She began bleaching her hair blonde and wore thick red lipstick to please him. It wouldn't be long before Brady would get her involved in his criminal activities, with the two often renting vans that they used to plan bank robberies, and Myra even purchased several firearms from the local gun club, though their plans to rob a bank ultimately didn't come to fruition. On July 12, 1963, Brady told Myra that he wanted to commit the perfect murder. The plan was for Myra to drive around in a van while Brady followed behind on a motorcycle and would flash his lights when he spotted a victim. He chose Pauline Reed, a 16-year-old schoolmate of Myra's younger sister, as his victim. Myra stopped the van and offered her a lift. When Reed got in, Myra asked her for help in finding an expensive lost glove in Saddleworth Moor. After Reed agreed to help, they drove to the moor, where Brady arrived soon after, with Myra telling Reed that he was there to help with the search. At that point, she returned to the van, while Brady took Reed further into the moor. He returned later, without Reed. He took Myra further into the moor and showed her what he had done to Pauline Reed. He had cut her throat so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Myra asked Brady if he had violated her, to which he said, "Of course I did." They then buried Reed with a shovel that Brady had hid nearby before the murder. On November 23rd, the two picked up another victim, 12-year-old John Kilbride. They offered him a ride home and a bottle of sherry. They told him they had to make a detour.
Just listening to these is a reminder why you don't just get into someone's car, why you don't just hitchhike. You don't do any of that. If someone goes, you get in the car, you don't get in the goddamn car. If you are hitchhiking, just don't do it. Just don't hitchhike. Because I'm telling you, even now, no matter what time frame, it's too much of a dangerous game for the person driving, who could pick you up because they don't know who you are, and for yourself because you don't know whose car you're getting into.
Detour to their home to get the sherry, before making another detour to the mall, once again to look for Myra's glove. While Myra waited in the car, Brady took Kilbride further into the mall and strangled him to death. On June 16, 1964, Myra asked 12-year-old Keith Bennett for help loading her van and offered him a ride home afterwards. As in the last two murders, she drove to the moor where Brady took Bennett to look for her lost glove. He returned soon after holding the shovel he used to bury Bennett. Their fourth victim was 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey, whom they found alone at a fun fair on December 26, 1964. Unlike the previous victims, she was taken back to Myra and Brady's house and forced to undress and pose for pictures before being strangled to death. Finally, on October 6, 1965, the couple arrived at Manchester Central Railway and invited 17-year-old Edward Evans back to their home. During this time period, Brady had requested Myra to have her brother-in-law David Smith witness the murder, the motive of which was to indoctrinate him into their crimes. After getting Evans relaxed with wine, Brady proceeded to hit Evans 14 times with a hatchet before strangling him in front of Myra and Smith. The body was then left in the spare bedroom, with plans for the body to be buried on the moor. This crime, however, would set about the downfall of the couple. Smith returned home, horrified at the murder he had witnessed. The following morning, he contacted the police and at Hyde Police Station detailed what he had witnessed to the officers. Upon
I mean, that was a stupid plan anyway. Why would you want to murder someone in front of someone who's not even part of your thing? Because you're not going to believe, like, you don't know how they're going to react. So they might be it might not go well for you. I don't know what the plan was there.
Discovering Evans' body, the police arrested Brady. On October 11th, Myra too would be arrested. Police then searched Saddleworth Moor, discovering Downey's body on the 16th of October and Kilbride's on the 21st of October. During her time in prison, Myra Hindley tried to improve her image by becoming a born-again Christian, taking up badminton, tapestry making, joining a choir, and even winning a prize for a love song she wrote. In her own words, she wanted to transform herself from a, quote, brassy blonde into an intelligent, well-adjusted member of society. She spent 6 years studying for a humanities degree from the Open University, which of course brings us back to the picture we started with. Most people could see through Myra's plan, knowing she was only going through all the trouble of improving her image in hopes that she would be released from prison, especially considering that before she received her degree, she admitted that a plea for parole that she had sent to the Home Secretary was, quote, a pack of lies. She'd even attempted to escape from prison once with help from a guard that she'd been in a relationship with. She made 3 attempts to appeal for release between 1997 and 2000, all of them rejected. She would ultimately never be released from prison, as Myra, a chain smoker suffering from angina and who had previously suffered a brain aneurysm, died from bronchial pneumonia on November 15, 2002. None of her relatives attended her funeral, and the public's hatred for Myra was still so strong that over 20 local undertakers refused to handle her cremation. Ian Brady would die on May 15, 2017, at the age of 79. After having spent 50 years behind bars, he took the location of where he'd buried Keith Bennett's body to his grave. Almost 60 years after Ian Brady and Myra Hindley took 5 innocent lives, they remain 2 of the UK's most infamous and hated serial killers, right up there with the likes of Fred and Rose West and the Yorkshire Ripper. Fenton Atkinson, who oversaw the couple's trial in 1966, described them as, quote, 2 sadistic killers of the utmost depravity, which rings just as true today as it did all those years ago.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know what you thought of these in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all for the next one.